The ultimatum. The Zen-3 warships appeared without warning above Earth's atmosphere on a cold January morning. There were 12 of them, each one larger than any structure humanity had ever built. They hung in the sky like dark moons, blocking out the sun over major cities across the globe. Within minutes, every screen on Earth displayed the same message in every language known to mankind. The message was simple and terrifying. The Zen-3 Empire requested an immediate audience with Earth's leadership. It was not truly a request. When beings arrived in ships that could vaporize continents, their invitations carried the weight of commands. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood in the hastily prepared conference room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. He was 58 years old, a career diplomat who had spent 3 decades negotiating treaties between nations. He had thought he understood power and intimidation. He had been wrong. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. The Zen-3 representative materialized in the center of the room through technology that humanity could not begin to understand. She called herself High Executor Vrax, and she was both beautiful and terrifying. Her skin seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. Her eyes were black voids that seemed to contain entire galaxies. When she spoke, her voice resonated in a way that made every human in the room feel it in their bones. Vrax did not waste time with pleasantries. She explained that the Zen-3 Empire had ruled over 4,000 star systems for more than 50,000 years. They maintained order across a quarter of the galaxy. They brought peace, prosperity, and advancement to every species they encountered. And now they were extending their hand to humanity. Marcus Chen listened carefully as Vrax outlined what she called the integration protocols. Humanity would be welcomed into the collective, a union of 643 species all living under Zen-3 guidance. Earth would receive technology that would solve every problem facing humanity. Disease would be eliminated. Hunger would end. Energy would be limitless. Death itself could be postponed for centuries. The price seemed reasonable at first. Earth would contribute resources to the collective, sharing what they had with the greater galactic community. They would accept Zen-3 advisors to help guide their development. They would adopt standard collective laws and customs to ensure harmony with other member species. But as Vrax continued speaking, the true cost became clear. All human military forces would be dissolved immediately. Weapons would be collected and destroyed. Earth's population growth would be controlled according to collective standards, meaning strict limits on how many children could be born. All major decisions about government, economy, and culture would require approval from Zen-3 overseers. Marcus Chen felt his stomach tighten as he realized what was really being offered. This was not partnership. This was not cooperation. This was surrender dressed in kind words. The Zen-3 were offering humanity the chance to become a vassal state, giving up every freedom in exchange for comfort and security. He asked how long this arrangement would last. Vrax smiled, though there was no warmth in it. She explained that species typically remained under full Zen-3 guidance for approximately 1,000 years. After that, if they had proven themselves worthy, they might be granted limited autonomy. Though she admitted that in 50,000 years of collective history, no species had ever been granted full independence once they joined. The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over the human delegates. 1,000 years of servitude with no guarantee of ever being free again. 40 generations of humans would live and die under alien rule, their choices made for them, their futures determined by beings from another world. Marcus Chen asked what would happen if humanity declined the offer. Vrax's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. She explained that the Zen-3 Empire could not allow unaligned species to exist in their sphere of influence. Such species created instability. They threatened the carefully maintained order that had brought peace to so many worlds. If humanity chose to remain independent, the Zen-3 would be forced to take measures to protect the collective. Economic isolation would be the first step. No trade with collective species, no access to their technology, no contact with the wider galactic community. If that proved insufficient, more direct methods would be employed. She did not need to elaborate. The 12 warships hanging over Earth's cities made the threat perfectly clear. Submit or be destroyed. Those were the only options the Zen-3 offered. Vrax gave humanity 7 days to make their decision. Then she vanished, returning to her flagship in orbit, leaving humanity alone with the most important choice in their history. The next 7 days were chaos. World leaders met in constant sessions, debating every angle of the decision. Scientists analyzed every piece of data they could gather about the Zen-3 and their collective. Military commanders developed contingency plans that everyone knew were hopeless against such overwhelming force. But it was Intelligence Officer Sarah Park who uncovered the truth that changed everything. Sarah was 32 years old, brilliant, and possessed of the kind of stubborn curiosity that made her excellent at her job. While others focused on the Zenthury's offer, Sarah dug into what had happened to other species who had accepted it. She hacked into communications between collective worlds, pieced together fragments of suppressed histories, and interviewed the few individuals from member species who were willing to talk. What she discovered was horrifying. The Zenthury did bring technology and prosperity to the species they absorbed. But they also brought something else. A slow, systematic erasure of everything that made those species unique. Languages were gradually replaced with Zenthury standard speech for efficiency. Cultural practices that did not align with collective values were labeled as primitive and discouraged. Art, music, literature, all of it was filtered through Zenthury approval processes until it became homogenized and bland. Worse still, Sarah discovered that the Zenthury used something they called harmony conditioning on member species. It was presented as a beneficial technology that reduced conflict and promoted cooperation. In reality, it was a sophisticated form of mind control that made populations docile and compliant. Within a few generations of joining the collective, most species lost the ability to even conceive of rebellion. They became content slaves, forgetting they had ever been free. Sarah presented her findings to Marcus Chin and the other leaders. The evidence was undeniable. The Zenthury were not offering humanity a partnership. They were offering extinction. Not a physical extinction, but something perhaps worse. The death of human identity, human culture, human independence. They would survive as a species, but they would cease to be truly human. Marcus Chin made his decision. He would rather see humanity die fighting for freedom than watch it slowly fade into comfortable slavery. But he was only one voice. The final choice belonged to all of humanity. A global referendum was held. Every human being over the age of 16 was given the chance to vote. The question was simple. Accept the Zenthury offer and live under their rule, or reject it and face the consequences. The world held its breath as the votes were counted. When the results came in, they were overwhelming. 87% of humanity voted to reject the Zenthury ultimatum. They chose freedom over security, dignity over comfort, the right to determine their own fate even if that fate might be destruction. On the seventh day, Marcus Chin returned to the conference room beneath the Rocky Mountains. High Executive Vrax materialized once again, her expression confident. She had seen this scenario play out hundreds of times across hundreds of worlds. Species always chose survival in the end. Fear always won. Marcus Chin stood tall and looked directly into those void-like eyes. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying the will of 8 billion human beings. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, he said, "We thank you for your offer. We recognize the benefits you have described. We understand the consequences of refusal. And with full knowledge of what we face, we respectfully decline." For the first time in recorded Zenthury history, High Executive Vrax showed genuine surprise. Her form flickered, energy crackling around her. She demanded to know if humans truly understood what they were refusing. Did they not value their own survival? Did they not care about the advancement and prosperity being offered? Marcus Chin smiled, though there was sadness in it. "We value survival," he said, "but not at any cost. We value advancement, but not if it means losing what makes us human. You offer us a comfortable cage, Executor Vrax. You offer us the chance to live as pets, well-fed and safe but never truly free. Humanity chooses differently. We choose to remain ourselves whatever that may cost us." Vrax's expression hardened. She warned that the Zenthury fleet would return in 30 days with sufficient force to ensure compliance. Humanity would be given one final chance to reconsider. If they maintained their foolish refusal, the consequences would be severe. Then she vanished, and the Zenthury warships departed from Earth's orbit. They left humanity alone, but everyone knew they would return. The galaxy's dominant power had been defied, and they would not allow that defiance to stand. Marcus Chin walked out of the conference room and into the command center where Earth's leaders had gathered. They looked at him with a mixture of fear and determination. They had bought themselves 30 days. Now they had to decide what to do with that time. What humanity did in those 30 days would shock the Zenthury Empire and change the course of galactic history forever. The preparation. The 30 days that followed humanity's refusal became known as the Awakening Period. While the Zenthury Empire expected Earth to spend that time in fear and desperation, humanity did something entirely unexpected. They worked with a unity and purpose that had never before existed in human history. Commander Rachel Torres stood in the war room of the United Earth Defense Initiative, an organization that had been secretly established 5 years earlier. She was 45 years old, a former fighter pilot who had risen through the ranks to become one of Earth's top strategic minds. What the Zenthri did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment long before the alien warships appeared in their skies. Rachel pulled up holographic displays showing installations scattered across the solar system. For the past decade, while appearing to focus on peaceful space exploration, humanity had been building something else entirely. Hidden bases on the dark side of the moon. Manufacturing facilities buried deep within asteroids. Weapons platforms disguised as scientific satellites. A network of defenses that the Zenthri scanners had completely missed. It was not enough to win a war against an empire that controlled 4,000 star systems. Rachel knew that. Every military analyst knew that. But it might be enough to make the Zenthri reconsider whether conquering humanity was worth the cost. Dr. James Okonkwo worked in a laboratory 3 kilometers beneath the Sahara Desert. He was humanity's leading expert in quantum mechanics and exotic physics. 4 years, he had been studying fragments of alien technology recovered from crashed probes and abandoned installations found on distant moons. The Zenthri were not the first aliens to visit human space, just the first to make direct contact. James had made a breakthrough 6 months before the Zenthri arrival. He discovered that all collective technology operated on a specific quantum frequency. It was like a universal language that allowed different alien technologies to interface seamlessly. But it also created a vulnerability. If humanity could disrupt that frequency, they could potentially shut down Zenthri systems. His team had built a prototype device called the dissonance generator. It was untested, theoretical, and might explode the moment they activated it. But it was also humanity's best chance at leveling the technological advantage the Zenthri held. James worked 18-hour days refining the design, building multiple units, preparing to deploy them across Earth's defensive network. Meanwhile, Intelligence Officer Sarah Park was engaged in the most important mission of her life. Her discovery about the Zenthri's true nature had sparked an idea. If the collective had absorbed 643 species, and if the Zenthri used mind control to keep them compliant, then perhaps some of those species remembered what freedom felt like. Perhaps some of them wanted it back. Sarah spent every waking hour sending encrypted messages to individuals across collective space. She used communication protocols the Zenthri did not monitor, hidden channels that member species had created to maintain some small measure of privacy. Her messages were simple. Humanity was standing against the Zenthri. Humanity was refusing to submit. And if any other species wanted to join that resistance, now was the time. The responses came slowly at first, then faster. A scientist from the krill species who had been secretly studying ways to break harmony conditioning. A military officer from the Torvan people who had never accepted his species' defeat. A network of rebels from the Nashari civilization who had been waiting generations for a catalyst to begin their uprising. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of voices reaching out from across the collective, all saying the same thing. We remember freedom. We want to fight. Sarah coordinated with these hidden allies, sharing intelligence about Zenthri fleet movements, military capabilities, and strategic weaknesses. She learned that the Zenthri Empire, despite its vast power, was not as invincible as it appeared. Their control relied on fear and the belief that resistance was hopeless. If that belief could be shattered, the entire structure might crumble. Ambassador Marcus Chin spent the 30 days engaged in a different kind of preparation. He reached out to every independent species humanity had discovered, every civilization that had managed to avoid Zenthri attention. He told them what was coming, warned them that if Earth fell, they would likely be next. He asked for help, for alliance, for any support they could provide. Most refused. They were too afraid of Zenthri retaliation, too convinced that humanity's resistance was suicidal. But a few listened. The VRWNN, a species of nomadic traders who valued freedom above all else, offered to share intelligence and provide supply lines. The Caliph, a warrior culture that despised the Zenthri's concept of enforced peace, sent a small fleet to stand with Earth. The Luminarians, beings of pure energy who existed in a different dimensional phase, promised to observe and intervene if the Zenthri violated certain universal laws. It was not much, but it was more than humanity had dared hope for. They would not face the Zenthri alone. As the 30th day approached, humanity made their final preparations. Every person on Earth knew what was coming. They had been given the choice to evacuate to hidden colonies in other star systems, places the Zenthri did not know about. Most chose to stay. They would stand with their home world whatever came. The Zenthri fleet arrived exactly on schedule. This time there were not 12 ships but 300. They filled Earth's orbit like a swarm of metal locusts, each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. High Executor Vrax sent a final message to the surface. Surrender now or be destroyed. Marcus Chin stood in the command center surrounded by military officers, scientists, and world leaders. He looked at the faces of people who had become like family over the past month. Then he sent humanity's response. A single word. No. The Zenthari opened fire. Energy beams capable of vaporizing cities lanced down from orbit toward Earth's major population centers. For a moment, it seemed that humanity's defiance would end in immediate annihilation. Then something unexpected happened. The Zenthari weapons simply stopped working. Energy beams dissipated harmlessly. Missile systems failed to launch. Targeting computers crashed. Across the entire Zenthari fleet, every weapon, every defensive system, every critical technology went dark. Dr. James Okonkwo had activated the dissonance generators. The quantum frequency disruption field spread across Earth's orbit, and the Zenthari found themselves suddenly vulnerable. Their ships were still intact, still capable of movement, but they had been rendered effectively harmless. Commander Rachel Torres gave the order, and Earth's hidden defenses came online. Railgun platforms launched projectiles at relativistic speeds. Laser arrays carved through Zenthari hulls that had never been designed to withstand kinetic weapons. Missile swarms using purely mechanical guidance systems swarmed the disabled alien ships. Within minutes, 50 Zenthari vessels had been destroyed. The rest scrambled to retreat beyond the range of the dissonance field. High Executor Vrax found herself in a situation no Zenthari commander had faced in 10,000 years. She was losing. The primitive humans with their crude technology had turned the tables on an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds. But the true shock came moments later when Vrax received reports from across collective space. Rebellions had erupted on 40 different worlds. Species that had been docile for generations were suddenly rising up, attacking Zenthari facilities, destroying harmony conditioning centers. The coordination was too perfect to be coincidental. Someone had been organizing this. Sarah Park's 30 days of secret communication had paid off. The oppressed species of the collective had been watching Earth's defiance, and it had given them hope. Now they were fighting for their own freedom, and the Zenthari Empire found itself facing not one rebellion but dozens. The Calith fleet arrived then, engaging the retreating Zenthari ships. The VRWNN traders began broadcasting the battle across every communication channel in the galaxy, ensuring that every species, both free and conquered, could see that the mighty Zenthari could bleed. The Luminarians appeared in their ethereal forms, forming a barrier around Earth that Zenthari weapons could not penetrate. Vrax realized with growing horror that she had made a catastrophic miscalculation. She had thought humanity was just another primitive species that could be easily conquered or cowed into submission. She had not understood that humans possessed something that most collective species had lost over generations of Zenthari rule. They possessed the ability to hope, to dream, to risk everything for freedom. And more dangerous still, they possessed the ability to inspire others to do the same. The battle raged for 3 days. The Zenthari brought reinforcements, but each wave found Earth's defenses growing stronger as more allies arrived. Species that had been neutral suddenly chose sides, unable to ignore the courage of humanity's stand. The rebellion spread across collective space like wildfire, and the Zenthari Empire found itself fighting on 100 fronts. On the 4th day, High Executor Vrax requested a ceasefire. It was the first time in recorded history that the Zenthari had asked for peace rather than demanding it. Marcus Chin met with Vrax again, but this time the dynamic had completely changed. The Zenthari executor no longer radiated confidence and power. She looked tired, uncertain, perhaps even afraid. She offered a new arrangement. The Zenthari would leave Earth alone, would recognize humanity's independence, if only humans would stop encouraging the rebellions tearing the collective apart. Marcus Chin considered the offer carefully. He could accept it, secure Earth's safety, and leave the other species to their fate. It would be the pragmatic choice, the safe choice. But it would also mean abandoning the allies who had risked everything to stand with humanity. He made a different proposal. The Zenthari Empire would grant independence to any species that requested it. The use of harmony conditioning would be permanently banned. Member species would be allowed to retain their own militaries, cultures, and governments. In exchange, humanity would work with the Zenthari to create a true alliance of equals, where cooperation was voluntary and freedom was guaranteed. Vrax protested that such an arrangement was impossible, that it would mean the end of the Zenthari Empire as it had existed for 50,000 years. Marcus Chin agreed. That was exactly the point. The age of empires ruling over subjugated species was over. A new age was beginning, one where different civilizations worked together as partners rather than masters and servants. Vrax consulted with her superiors, with the Zenthari Council that governed the Empire. The debate lasted for days. But in the end they saw no other choice. The rebellions were spreading too fast. Too many species were choosing freedom over security. The old order could not be maintained by force alone. The Treaty of Terra was signed 6 months after humanity's initial refusal. It established the Galactic Federation, a voluntary alliance of free species working together for mutual benefit. The Zenthari remained powerful members of this new federation, but they no longer ruled it. No single species did. Humanity had done what 643 other species had failed to do. They had said no to the galaxy's dominant power and made it stick. They had shown that freedom was worth fighting for, that dignity mattered more than comfort, that a species willing to risk everything could change the course of history. The galaxy would never be the same. And it all started because one species of stubborn, idealistic, impossibly brave beings from a small blue planet chose to stand up and say no. Years later, when historians studied this period, they would call it the Awakening. The moment when the galaxy woke up from 50,000 years of enforced peace and remembered what true freedom meant. And at the center of that awakening stood humanity, forever changing their status from a primitive species on the galactic frontier to the catalyst that liberated countless worlds. Marcus Chin, Sarah Park, Rachel Torres, James Okonkwo, and countless other humans became legends across 1,000 star systems. Not as conquerors but as liberators. Not as rulers but as inspirations. They proved that courage and determination could overcome overwhelming odds, that the spirit of freedom could never truly be extinguished as long as someone was willing to fight for it. The Zenthari had offered humanity the stars on a silver platter, along with chains to bind them. Humanity had chosen instead to reach for the stars with their own hands, free and unbound. And in doing so, they had given that same choice to every other species in the galaxy. That was the true power of humanity. Not their technology, not their weapons, not even their tactical brilliance. It was their unshakable belief that freedom was worth any price, and their ability to make others believe it too. The galaxy had been shocked when humanity said no. But it was inspired by what humanity did next. And that inspiration changed everything.